If moral facts and duties exist, what should we make of this? Does this infer a deeper meaning about reality and ourselves? There is a realization that if objective moral facts and duties exist, they must be grounded in something. If they exist, the question simply follows to ask, where do they come from? But modern philosophers have a hard time grounding them in something natural, or anywhere for that matter. John Riss says, it is widely admitted to be a crisis in contemporary Western debate about ethical foundations. There just doesn't seem to be a sufficient natural explanation on where to ground moral facts and duties. Theists then attempt to claim this means we should ground objective moral facts and duties in the existence of a God, but never explain how this actually works. Simple forms of the moral argument seem almost like a non sequitur and fail to explain how moral facts and duties are actually grounded in the existence of God. However, beyond the popular arguments, there are better formulated versions proposed by philosophers which demonstrate what the existence of moral facts and duties mean. So without further ado, let's begin. Premise 1. Morality is a rational enterprise. This premise is not too controversial. Moral facts and duties are deciphered through rationality and reasoning, much like mathematics or philosophical positions, not through empirical investigations. If we see someone harming someone else, we cannot know how we ought to act. We have to reason that we ought not act a certain way. Thus, morality is deciphered through rationality. The only people who deny this are non-cognitivists, and we address this in another video. Premise 2. Moral realism is true, meaning moral facts and duties exist. This is the most controversial premise, and most skeptics will deny this one. However, since we argued for this in our previous video, we will not defend this here, but simply refer people to that video to show how this premise is supported. Premise 3. The moral problems and disagreements among humans are too much for us to assume moral facts and duties are grounded in a human source of rationality. This is true because humans cannot be the source of moral knowledge. We are not perfect moral beings or have perfect knowledge of the facts. In fact, because we're not morally perfect, our own actions should reveal we are not the foundation of moral knowledge. We constantly fail to grasp moral facts and wrongly perform moral duties. Plus, we are contingent beings, so we cannot be the foundation of moral facts and duties for the same reason the laws of logic are not grounded in a human source. Humans have only discovered the laws of logic and mathematics. We did not create them. 2 + 2 = 4 would still be true if no human existed to write it down. If morality is a rational enterprise, and moral realism is true, then it would simply follow moral facts and duties cannot be grounded in human rationality, because humans are contingent beings and constantly fail the moral laws. So what would this logically follow to? From premise 2, moral facts and duties are objectively true, so they must be grounded in something necessary and unchanging. That would be obviously true by logical deduction. But also from premise 1, we know morality is a rational enterprise, so moral facts and duties must be grounded in a rational source. Non-sentient objects cannot be rational, so it would have to be something sentient to be rational, simply by logical deduction. So moral facts and duties cannot be grounded in contingent humans, must be grounded in something unchangeable and necessary. And because morality is a rational enterprise, this necessary unchangeable foundation must also be rational and sentient. Thus it logically follows to premise 4. Moral facts and duties are grounded in a necessary rational source. This just simply follows by deduction. So what exactly would this source be? Well, it would not be human-like, like a big man in the clouds, namely a godlike version of ourselves who decides moral facts and duties on a whim or can change his or her mind. But simply a conscious, rational, necessary entity who is the foundation of moral facts and duties, and who we would look to for moral guidance. So this would simply follow to premise 5. This source, whoever this would be, is what we call God. Therefore, if moral realism is true, we do not need to arbitrarily ground objective moral facts and duties in God. It logically follows they would be grounded in a necessary rational source, who we look to for moral guidance, who we call God. It simply follows logically there. So the conclusion? Therefore, God exists. Now, despite how easily this flows from the truth of moral realism, some object this argument doesn't work. A.C. Grayling tries to attack the moral argument by claiming, The moral argument that there can be no morality unless policed by a deity is refuted by the existence of good atheists. Arguably, non-theists count among themselves the most careful moral thinkers. I am shocked that a professional philosopher such as Grayling would confuse the moral argument so badly. No philosopher of religion has ever presented the moral argument on the idea morality needs policing, or that there cannot be good moral atheists. The moral argument only addresses the foundation of objective moral duties and facts. It doesn't remotely claim there cannot be good atheists, as William Lane Craig said in reply to this objection. It was no part of my argument that God is necessary to explain our moral sense of right and wrong, good and evil. Over and over in the debate, I carefully distinguished between moral ontology, questions about the reality of moral values, and moral epistemology, questions about how we come to know moral values. And I said that my argument is solely about the objective reality of moral values, not how we come to know them. I'll appeal to the same mechanisms that you appeal to in order to explain how you know that is true. I don't think that we need to appeal to God at all to know that objective moral values and duties exist. So you're just barking up the wrong tree insofar as I'm concerned. So again, the moral argument is about what is the foundation of objective moral duties and facts, not how we know or came to learn what morality is. Just that if moral realism is true, moral facts and duties would be grounded in a necessary rational source. Of course there can be good atheists. We would expect them to exist if moral realism is true, for the very reasons I gave in my video defending moral realism. On top of this, even if someone gave a complete evolutionary account of how morality arose in humans, that would just explain how we came to understand moral facts and duties. It would not explain what they are, or their foundation, only how we came to learn about them. Again, it's the same as confusing epistemology and ontology. How we came to understand something doesn't mean that is all it is. How we learn about objective moral facts and duties doesn't say what the foundation of them is. For that, we have to study the ontology of them, as we have done here in this video. The most popular objection is the Euthyphro dilemma, which challenges the moral argument with a question. Is something good because God says it is good, or does God say it's good because it is good? The basic aim of the objection is to set up a dichotomy for the theist, with both options being unfavorable. If something is good only because God says it is, then God can say just about anything is good, and it would be so. Things like torture and rape could be good just because God commanded it. So we obviously cannot accept that. But if it is the other option, God commands something because it is good, this means God cannot be the foundation and standard for moral facts and duties, and therefore he must look to something else as the source of morality. But the problem with this objection is it fails for the obvious reasons our argument sets out to avoid. We are not arbitrarily grounding moral facts and duties into God, because we have no other option. We are looking at the ontology of moral facts and duties, and reasoning they are grounded in a necessary rational source that we look to for moral guidance. The term God is just a title applied to this necessary rational source. When chemists discovered water was H2O, they did not merely stipulate one was the other. Rather, they discovered the terms meant the same thing. Likewise, when we investigate into the nature of the good and discover it shares the properties of what theists refer to when they say God, we discover that one is identical to the other. If some deity looked to some other necessary rational source as the foundation of morality, then that source would be the real God. And this source could not just arbitrarily command moral things and make them moral. As the argument explains, objective moral facts and duties have to be grounded in something unchangeable and necessary, something that doesn't arbitrarily change values from time to time. If a deity commanding morality did this, then it would not be the necessary rational source, but some lower demigod. I think this objection results from a semantic disorder of the argument. We are not wording it to say God is the grounding of morality. We are saying moral facts and duties are grounded in a rational, necessary source, and this source is what we call God. The good is just titled God. The good is not something different, yet dependent on him. The good itself has to be the rational, necessary source. Thus the good is God, and God is the good. Therefore, as we can see, if moral realism is true, it leads us right back to the existence of a conscious source, who we look to for moral guidance and direction, a necessary being that is beyond the bounds of time, who is the good, and therefore, worthy of our praise and worship.